Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is October 14th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast is The White House in Damage Control. Of course, this is a question we are asking given a few stories that we discussed yesterday that broke over the weekend and transpired last week because I was off on Thursday and Friday of last week. And then a little bit of breaking news that has come over the wires this evening. Now, I'm just going to warn you right now, some of this is, to me, it's not foolproof. This is based off of sources from CNN and the New York Times and even some from the Wall Street Journal. I like to take a step back. They can do their reporting, let this settle down. But nevertheless, what is coming out is in regards to a deposition that took place on Capitol Hill today before some congressional committees that lasted about 10 hours. This was behind closed doors. This is dealing with a former senior aide to Donald Trump, Fiona Hill. She was involved with matters related to Russia, and some of the sources are reporting that Miss Hill had stated that former National Security Advisor John Bolton, the same John Bolton that we do not like here at the Capital News, who was fired recently or resigned. Again, there's some mix-up on that. Donald Trump says he pretty much fired him. John Bolton says, I quit. I'm done. I had to resign. So you got that back and forth. But the same John Bolton, according to Fiona Hill, she claims that John Bolton said Rudy Giuliani is a hand grenade and he's going to blow everybody up. And this is in regards to everything that has been taking place with Ukraine. Now, if this is true, this is going to be problematic. Now, this is hearsay because this would be what Miss Hill, Fiona Hill, was saying that John Bolton said. Okay, so that's hearsay. So now are these congressional committees going to subpoena or call forward John Bolton? Now, John Bolton may very well be a disgruntled former White House employee. He may have an axe to grind with this White House and with the president himself. So you have to consider the source. And we don't know who the source is for CNN and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, but this is what is being reported. So I'm just letting you know that is out there. This is another twist and turn to this story because Fiona Hill is no longer with the White House and with Donald Trump. She's a former advisor, same as John Bolton. So, this will continue to be argued, I'm sure, by Donald Trump, that this is just another deep state conspiracy. If that's the case, then why did you have John Bolton in your White House? Unless, of course, it was like we said here or multiple times, well, maybe it was sort of keep your friends close but your enemies closer, if that's the case, because John Bolton has a very questionable history as far as I'm concerned here in the United States with being pretty much a war promoter. There's pretty much no country, especially in the Middle East, that he doesn't want to invade and take over for whatever reason. We've stated our case in regards to John Bolton and a whole host of other neoconservatives out there. These endless wars have to end, and we're going to talk about that further because that's some more damage control that's being handled by the White House. But this story broke later this evening, and so it's going to be interesting to see how the White House handles this moving forward because there isn't a lot of great communication that comes out of the White House. I don't even recall if there has been a formal press briefing by the new press secretary. I just don't know. I know Donald Trump goes out there, obviously, on the White House lawn and talks to reporters. He, digs in with them every once in a while, which is more his style. He prefers to go at it with those reporters. It gives him some airtime, allows him to sort of fight back and forth with them. I think he truly enjoys it. And, but the country does deserve some formal press briefings, but it's just the press secretary, no matter who he or she has been over the course of these last 3 years, to keep everything straight and organized, because Donald Trump changes his mind minute to minute. I mean, they're sitting there, they're asking their questions, they're giving the press briefing, and Donald Trump could be somewhere in the White House tweeting. And it could, go against what the press secretary just stated. So, you had Sean Spicer, you had Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's no easy task. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're George Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, whoever the president is. It makes no difference. That is an extremely difficult job. But at least if you have one formal voice, it makes it a little bit easier. doing that under Donald Trump's administration is almost an impossible task, which is probably why, in large part, that there hasn't been that many formal press briefings as of late, especially in the midst of everything that is going on. Donald Trump would rather be his own PR man, because Rudy Giuliani is not doing that great of a job, in my opinion. And Rudy Giuliani, according to this source and according stating that Fiona Hill's testimony or deposition was that John Bolton said that he wants nothing to do with Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani is a hand grenade, and he is going to blow everybody up. And this is in regards to, again, the Ukraine situation. This is going to unfold. We need the truth to come out. We need justice to be served. Whoever's guilty needs to be prosecuted. I mean, it just needs to happen. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's his kids. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. I don't care if it's Joe Biden and his son. I don't care. There could be no two-tiered justice system in this country. There can no longer be abuses of power at the highest level of our government. It can't happen. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton. I don't care. This country is out of control. It's off the rails. It's off the track. All right? You need to wake up. You need to get out of your partisanship. You need to put the country first. Because if we don't, there's not going to be a country, and I think we're getting close to that point. Now, despite the fact that we allegedly have the greatest trade deal ever, especially in regards to agricultural products, the markets were flat today. They were flat today. And you had Secretary Mnuchin of the Treasury come out today and say, well, you know what? We're going to put tariffs on China if no deal is agreed. What? What? You're going to put tariffs on China if no deal is agreed? What do you mean no deal is agreed? If no deal is agreed. Didn't the president come out last week and say we have the greatest deal ever of phase one? We don't know how many phases. We don't know the specifics. There's nothing signed. There's nothing sealed. There's nothing delivered. But there's the greatest deal ever. That was Friday. Now on Monday, only a couple of days later, the Treasury Secretary comes out and says, if there's no deal with China, the tariffs are going to go up. The ones that are anticipated to come into effect after Christmas. And again, it's after Christmas, or in December, I should say, because, well, it can't be before the shopping season. I don't understand why, because we're told that the Chinese are paying for it. But for some reason, Donald Trump seems to think, well, if we put them on too early, it could affect the holiday shopping season. So I guess that's an admission that Donald Trump and his administration have been lying to us, that it isn't the Chinese that are paying the tariffs, it's you and me and the American public, because that's how they work. Okay? So, obviously, no deal, no interim deal, nothing signed, nothing sealed, nothing delivered. Promises, promises, and promises. And now you have the Chinese coming out and saying, well, we want more talks before we move forward with this quote-unquote phase one deal, whatever this means. Because President Trump and President Xi are expected to meet next month down in Chile to deal with an Asian Pacific organization. Okay, so they're going to be down there, and President Xi, according to Chinese media, doesn't want to sign anything until there are some more talks and some of the details are ironed out. So again, folks, what we have been stating here for months, this is October 14th. It was in middle of May of this year that I wrote my letter to the president. You can find it on thecapitalnews.com. Read it. Check it out. We also did a podcast where I took the time to read that letter aloud, if you don't like reading. Okay? Check it out, please. Months ago, we were predicting this. Months ago, we were warning that this was going to take place, and it has been unfolding before our very eyes for the past few months. This becomes a question of credibility. If Donald Trump wants to throw his name out there and throw caution to the wind and just say, you know what, I don't care. This is not the Trump organization. He wants to ruin his name, that's his business. If he wants to call into question his credibility as Donald J. Trump, citizen of the United States, as the CEO of the Trump organization, that's his business. When he does it as the President of the United States, when he does it representing the office of the presidency, which is the office of the American people, I have a problem with it. And we said if he continues down this path, it's only going to be a matter of time before he comes out and he makes continued outlandish remarks, exaggerations, and outright lies, saying that there is the greatest deal ever in the works, or that it's about to happen, or that it has happened, and all that it's going to take is for some minister, some member of the press in China, or President Xi himself to come out and say, that ain't true, folks. And now you got a problem, ladies and gentlemen, because now what's the world and what are the markets going to do? Who are they going to believe? Are they going to believe President Donald J. Trump, the president of the greatest country in the world? The representative of a free country? Now, of course, we can have that debate. Or are they going to believe the Communist Party in China? Who are you going to believe? Because if the market starts to believe the Communist Chinese Party over the President of the United States, we have a huge problem, ladies and gentlemen. This is no joke. This is no art of the deal. This is somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. This is somebody who is setting himself and this country up for failure, for a complete loss of credibility and trust in our government. Now, there's a whole host of reasons why we should not trust our government. We talk about these things here every single day, but I think you understand the distinction. I think you understand the point that I am making. Just because there are a whole bunch of things to criticize, and in my opinion, rightly so, against our government, that doesn't mean that our government should cease to exist. I'm not somebody who says that government should not exist. There are proper rules and functions of government, and there are things that need to be respected. Donald Trump seems to have no respect for the office he holds when it comes to the credibility of that office. Again, he wants to do this with his own name, with his own organization. That's his business. Good luck to you. But when you do it to the office of the presidency, that's our office as the American people. And it calls into question our credibility because we put him in that office. Whether you voted for him or not, he's there. So he is our ambassador to the world. And when he makes these remarks, when he says that China is going to buy more agricultural products, and they don't, when he says this is going to be the greatest deal ever, and it isn't, when he says, or members of his administration come out and say there's going to be signing ceremonies, and there are not, when his administration comes out and says we are in the final laps of this trade deal, and we're not, this has huge repercussions. When he is finally asked about specifics of this deal, he dodges. He cannot provide them. Nobody can. This is not the way you manage and run a government. This is not the way you manage a business. In fact, if you were a CEO of a publicly traded company and you came out and you made these remarks to your shareholders and you made these publicly, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have an investigation by the SEC. You might have an investigation by the DOJ and the FBI. You're probably going to be sued by your shareholders. But Donald Trump gets away with it. He gets away with it. This is complete and utter market manipulation, which is a high crime. That's what that means. I know there's a lot of debate going on out there in the media because of all of the impeachment hoopla and this, that, and the other. Well, high crimes and misdemeanors and being a traitor and bribes and all this, that, and the other. That's what high crimes mean. It's an abuse of power. That's why this is not a criminal investigation. This is a political investigation. This is a political event. That's what impeachment is. It's an abuse of his power and authority as the President of the United States. There's nothing but evidence out there, ladies and gentlemen, if U.S.-China trade talks, which we know has been a bunch of BS, positive context to the tweet or to the statement, no matter who's saying it, whether it's the president, whether it's Secretary Wilbur Ross, Secretary Mnuchin, Peter Navarro, who needs to be fired, or Larry Kudlow, an economic advisor, or Donald Trump himself. Now, the markets will also sell off if Donald Trump has a hissy fit or just gets tired of whatever for whatever reason and says, we need to increase the tariffs on the Chinese. They're taking too long to do what they said they're going to do, so we're going to increase tariffs. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, you can make money in these markets if it goes up and if it goes down. And if you know what you are going to tweet, if you know with all likelihood, playing the probability game. If it's positive that the markets are going to rally, well, maybe you can get in the options markets and buy some calls and make a lot of money in a very short period of time because you know what that headline's going to be. Likewise, you enter the options market and you buy some puts to the downside. So if you know that you're going to put on some tariffs on China, that the markets aren't going to like this and they're going to sell off strongly, you can make a ton of money if you know what this guy is going to tweet or say. He knows what he's going to say before he does it. Is he calling up his children to say, get involved? Get in the options markets, make a trade? This is what I'm going to say? This deserves to be investigated as far as I'm concerned. This is as clear as day. That's an abuse of power. And we're going to talk about more of that because I do think the White House is in damage control. They're going to be in damage control. So, but to the markets, because this was a big nothing burger day in the markets, despite the fact that we have the greatest trade deal ever concocted, at least for the time being, because this is only phase 1. Phase 2 will be better than phase 1. Phase 3 will be better than phase 2. Phase 4, phase 25 and a half is going to be the best. Just wait till we get there. Probably, I don't know, how long would that be? 2040 maybe? So we have the S&P down 4 points. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gave back 29. The NASDAQ lost 8. And the Russell 2000, the small cap index, gave back 6.5 points for the day. The Dow Jones Transports lost 0.4%, and the New York Stock Exchange was also down 0.2%. Despite the fact that you have the greatest deal ever, oil markets were very tame today. You have oil at $53 for WTI, and Brent, the international metric, is at $59 a barrel. Despite the fact that you have the greatest trade deal ever, there has not been a huge sell-off in the precious metals space because the precious metals are going to be seen as more of a safe haven bet, right? Or, of course, it could be a hedge against inflation or what the central bankers are doing. But nevertheless, this is sort of a risk-off trade. If you're going to be back into the game with equities, you're going to say, well, we want to be risk-on with stocks and riskier assets, and we're going to be off with the precious metals. But there hasn't been a huge sell-off in the precious metals. We have gold trading at $1,494 an ounce, and silver is trading at $17.71. We have the U.S. 10-year Treasury down 1% for the day and is now yielding 1.73%. That's the U.S. 10-year Treasury, 1.73%. Just last week, a couple weeks ago, we were at 1 point in the 1.5s, 1.6s. Now we're at 1.73. And this is when the Federal Reserve says we're going to come in and start buying more bonds and more T-bills and more notes. I mean, come on, give me a break. We have the VIX, the volatility index, down 6.5%, which is somewhat shocking today because the markets were relatively flat. There's an inverse relationship between the VIX and the broader markets because, well, I mean, if the stock markets are going up, the VIX tends to go down and vice versa. So the volatility index gave back 6.5% and is trading at $14.57. And given our volatility model, and of course it could go to the upside, but historically speaking, when you have an increase in volatility, it tends to be tilted to the downside. In my opinion, right now, unless we do have a melt-up, the VIX is just simply undervalued. $14.57 just is too low in my opinion. But we're going to see. Maybe tomorrow, tomorrow's another day. Maybe this was, it's Columbus Day. Maybe it was a holiday for people. Maybe they took off. They took a half a day. There wasn't a whole bunch of heavy volume trading on Wall Street today. So maybe that's all it was. Maybe everybody's going to come back with a roar tomorrow. We'll see. That is also the kickoff of Q3 earnings season. And the big banks, the major banks, are going to be front and center. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Citi, you name it, they're going to be reporting tomorrow. All eyes and ears are going to be on these banks, on how they performed in Q3, and then very importantly, the type of forward guidance that they will be giving for Q4 and for next year as well, if they provide out that far. So that's going to be something that we're going to be focusing on during tomorrow's podcast, I would imagine, unless there is some other breaking news. So we'll keep you updated with that. But Q3 earnings season is kicking off. A couple things to note. Because we are in earnings season, this will be a blackout period for share buybacks because you can't have the appearance of any type of insider trading. But of course, if it is an earnings season, let the insider trading commence. And then we also have the Federal Reserve FOMC meeting that is going to take place in 2 weeks at the end of this month. So there's going to be another blackout period with the Federal Reserve. That just simply means that the members of the Federal Reserve are not going to be coming out and making more speeches or making any more remarks because they don't want to influence the markets any more than they already do. I mean, this is a bunch of nonsense, but that's what they do. Okay, so that's that. So again, the title of today's podcast, The White House and Damage Control. We talked about already some of that testimony with Fiona Hill, at least according to some sources, Wall Street Journal, CNN, New York Times, that type of stuff. So we'll keep you posted on that if that turns into anything bigger with John Bolton and other members of the administration. We also have the Democratic debates that are going to take place tomorrow evening, hosted by CNN and the New York Times. This will be in Ohio. Ohio is a bellwether state, although it does appear to be leaning more and more towards Donald Trump. But we'll see what happens there. We got a long way to go until next November. That's a lifetime away, ladies and gentlemen. It really is, especially with the speed and rapidity of the headlines that just come out on what seems like a minute-by-minute basis. So I think there's going to be about 12 Democratic contenders for the presidency on that stage tomorrow. It will be whittled down much, much more come the next debates, I believe next month in November. So I imagine that this is probably going to be somewhat heated and contested because you're going to have people, out on the outer wings of the stage fighting to get as much airtime as possible. And right now, I don't know how long this debate's going to be. With 12 people up there, I imagine it's probably going to be 3 hours. So these people are going to be clawing for attention, trying to stand out. Right now, this is pretty much a two-way race between Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Now, can Bernie get back in it? Yes, he most certainly can. Of course, he's fallen off because of the recent heart attack. Of course, we wish no one any ill will. So best of luck and recovery to Senator Sanders. Chances are he probably will make, a full recovery. He seems to be in good spirits. If he can get his energy level back up, that whole thing could be forgotten within a matter of weeks, if not a couple of months. I mean, recall, folks, Vice President Dick Cheney had a heart attack. I mean, how many did he have? I mean, you lose count. I mean, and he was literally one heartbeat away from becoming the President of the United States for 8 years. 8 years. Okay, so, there's a lot of hoopla and hype out there and things being put out there that Bernie Sanders is done because of this. I'm not so sure about that, but we'll see. We'll see. Everything that's going on with Ukraine and Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden has obviously pulled down Joe Biden a little bit. We're no fans of really any of these Democrats here, but that has pulled him down, and then that has sort of opened the door for Elizabeth Warren to sort of take the lead. Senator Harris has really proven, Kamala Harris has really proven to be really what's the word to describe it? Just uneventful, uninspiring. I don't like this woman at all. Just really didn't show up. I really thought that she would. I did. Not because I like her, I don't. But, I mean, I already say these people are idiots and a bunch of lunatics, but, I figure, well, maybe she could pull something out somewhere, but it doesn't seem like it. There's some speculation that maybe because Bernie's down in the polls and Elizabeth Warren is such a socialist and Joe Biden has all the heat on him now with Ukraine, maybe Mayor Pete Buttigieg is going to make a stride and make his way up to the polls. This is his second chance to sort of get at it before he starts, losing donors and this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of jockeying for position. It's anybody's bet, but the debates do have an opportunity for some people on the fringe to get their names back into the ring and maybe start to compete and maybe start to not look as left and loony as they have been right now. You need somebody who's more centrist. You need somebody who's more balanced as far as I'm concerned. But we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you posted. But tomorrow, we are expecting to hear from Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. He is expected to make remarks or to give an interview prior to the Democratic debate tomorrow evening. Donald Trump, during some recent campaign rallies, has been calling out Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. This is no surprise. This is what the president does. That's his style. Like it or hate it, makes no difference. It's what he does. He'll continue to do it. Some of this has been rather personal. but he's been calling out Hunter Biden. Where is he? He's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. How did he make all this money? Where did it come from? Yada, 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 which is, it's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question. Would he have earned that money or have been on those boards if it wasn't for his father? But would Donald Trump be Donald Trump if it wasn't for his father? Donald Trump was born on third base and thinks he hit a home run. So, again, like we stated yesterday, if you're going to go after Joe Biden and his son, then you got to go after Donald Trump and his children. Because his children, Donald Trump's children, are sitting with him in the White House. You got Ivanka Trump. You have his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Okay? So don't give me this crap where it's only bad for one side, but it's perfectly fine for you to do it, because it isn't. Because it isn't. So he's been calling out Hunter Biden. Well, here he comes. He's going to be making remarks tomorrow, and we already have the president tweeting this evening saying that this interview of Hunter Biden, it's already skewed because he's going to be given softball questions. It's just going to be a big farce, that there's nothing to see here. It's going to be a big joke. He's corrupt as the day is long, and so is the news outlet who's going to be conducting the interview. He's trying to get ahead of it. Again, White House and damage control. Because if Hunter Biden comes off, this will be really his first presentation to the American people in regards to this conspiracy or to these allegations. If he comes off to the American people as credible and articulate and intelligent and informed, that ain't going to look good for Donald Trump and company. It's not. If he makes his argument emotional, because the Biden family has been through a lot. He lost his brother recently to cancer. He lost his mother and I believe another sibling years and years ago when he was very, very young. And obviously that was, Joe Biden's, former wife and his children. So he can make an emotional appeal. And if he comes off as intelligent and credible on a whole host of issues, that ain't going to bode well for Donald Trump and company, because they're demonizing this guy as an idiot who only has his position because of daddy. And if it turns out that this guy is articulate and may be able to speak intelligently on a handful of topics and makes an emotional appeal that says, my father has more character in his little finger than Donald Trump has in his entire body through what he's been through, I don't want to hear it. That will resonate with a lot of people. It really will. This is what Donald Trump, you got to shut up, man. You have to shut up. You are supposed to be uniting this country, not dividing it. That's one of my biggest problems, along with the credibility. He has the ability to do it. He can do it. There is nothing stopping him from having an Oval Office sit down with the American people like he did several months ago in regards to the Mexican-U.S. border. If it's good enough to talk about steel and concrete barriers, it's damn well good enough to have that type of setting with the American people to talk about the divisiveness that exists in this country and that we have to rise above it. But he isn't doing it. He isn't doing it. This is an abysmal failure. I don't care what the Democrats are doing. You got to be bigger than them. You have to be bigger than them. You have to say we have things that we have to deal with. We have issues that are dividing this country, and we have to put them aside, and we have to get things done. Just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. It's a failure of leadership as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to wait and see what Hunter Biden has to say tomorrow. Maybe he'll come off as this spoiled kid. Maybe he'll come off as some arrogant guy. And if he does, that's not going to bode well for Hunter Biden and for Joe Biden. And just because if he does put on a good performance, that doesn't mean that he is exempt from investigation. If there are other facts that come out that state, well, you know what, there is something a little fishy here between Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter, investigate them all. I'm fair. Go after all of them. I'm just trying to do my best to call balls and strikes. Get the politics out of it. Get out of being siloed into being a Republican or being a Democrat. I don't care who you are. Go after all of them. So we'll see what happens there. We have Mike Pence, the vice president, is set to go to Turkey to talk peace, to settle this whole thing down, because this was shooting from the hip. This was Donald Trump trying to make good on a campaign pledge to end the endless wars, and we're all for that, but you have to do it orderly. You can't shoot from the hip. You can't allow other countries to just go in and start invading other countries, especially when they start attacking and killing people who we have been supporting and we have made alliances with. Again, this calls into question the credibility of the presidency and the United States. I couldn't agree more with Donald Trump that says we're 7,000 miles away, let them fight their wars. But we're here, we started this, we got involved. You can't just exit haphazardly, especially if this is the result, because you have an ally that is now, they could be massacred. They could be massacred. And I know this is difficult. These are difficult situations. These are difficult decisions. That's why the president is the president. That's why the president makes these decisions. If these decisions could be made by somebody lower down the line, they would have been made. These are difficult decisions, and it's easy to sit here behind a microphone and second-guess anybody, and it's a tough job, and it is a tough decision. And we applaud Donald Trump here all the time for having restraint and not going into Iran, and he has had multiple occasions to use for his justification. If this was a previous administration, we would have been there already. So I applaud this president for showing restraint and not getting involved in more wars. But there's also some tact and some strategy that needs to be employed and implemented as well in regards to this, because now we have a situation where you talk about endless wars, and now there could be another one that breaks out between Syria and Turkey. And despite all this, you still have oil that's relatively flat, and you still have precious metals that are relatively flat as far as today is concerned. So what's going on? We got Mike Pence going over there to try to negotiate some sort of peace. We have no idea what was discussed on that phone call between President Trump and President Erdogan of Turkey, because apparently, the United States did not give the green light for Turkey to invade Syria, especially to this degree. Maybe President Erdogan was reading between the lines, maybe wink, wink, nod, nod. Yeah, we can go in there and do this. Or maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he wants to cause trouble in Syria, in the Middle East. Maybe he wants to cause a problem for the for the Europeans and say, hey, if you guys get involved and you tell me that I can't do what I'm doing here in Syria, I'm going to release all these people, all these refugees. I'm going to let them all into Europe, because they'd rather be in Europe than in Syria and in Turkey. And you're going to be dealing with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people. And now you have President Macron of France and Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, coming out and saying, whoa, this is not good. We got to put sanctions on Erdogan. We got to stop this guy, because they don't want those people in their country. They don't want them, folks. They do not want them. They don't. So in a way, maybe that's part of Donald Trump's plan. Let's get out of here and let's let the Europeans deal with it, because that's what Erdogan's likely going to do. I have no idea. But that is what is transpiring. So Vice President Pence is going over there trying to calm the situation. We also have Secretary Mnuchin and the White House putting on sanctions, or expected to put on sanctions, on Turkey in regards to some individuals within Turkey, obviously some power brokers, some wealthy individuals, and then members of the government. And then Donald Trump also wants to place restrictive tariffs on Turkish steel. So that's the strategy. That's the game plan. All of this will be discussed, I'm sure, tomorrow during the Democratic debates. The impeachment inquiry is continuing. There are other members of the administration, current and former, who will be giving their deposition before members of congressional committees during this week and likely during the weeks to come. So the markets were flat. We have Q3 earnings kicking off tomorrow with the banks. We have John Bolton back in the news, at least for the time being. We'll see how that pans out, or if this is going to be another fake news story. We just don't know at this time. We have Hunter Biden to give remarks tomorrow. Stay tuned, folks. We told you this was going to be a bumpy week, and so far it is. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Kapital News. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, and leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. This is the Kapital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.